Parliamentary Committee 4 weeks ago in Skopje, and will, I'm confident, contribute to better understanding of the challenges we have on the road ahead. We have always cherished the cooperation with the European Parliament and the Foreign Affairs Committee, who have given invaluable support and assistance to our European integration efforts. Honourable members, allow me to start by saying that I'm here because Macedonia's determination and desire is Europe. We belong to Europe and are steadfastly resolved to continue on this path. Being in the European Parliament is a pleasure and honor. I came today to elaborate the arguments about the necessity of the continuation of the EU accession process with Macedonia, a candidate country, for 6 years, ready to open accession negotiations since 2009. Some may say these are very unfortunate times for the process of enlargement. Indeed, we are keenly aware of the difficulties and the consequences of the debt crisis in Europe. My country, small as it may be, gives its own contributions in this difficult context by implementing responsible and prudent economic and microeconomic policies that results in sustainable fiscal position and economic growth. We are well within Maastricht criteria. Budget deficit is 2.5%. Government debt amounts to 25.9% of the GDP. And we keep inflation at bay, now at 4.2%. In the first half of 2011, we have reached 5% GDP growth rate, and even by most conservative estimates, next year we will achieve growth rate somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. We still have some room for an accommodative fiscal policy that allows increased government spending if the situation requires to do so. We have been hailed for our economic policies and the reforms that have been implemented. World Bank 2012 Doing Business report ranked Macedonia at 22nd out of 183 countries and has qualified as being the third best reformer in the world. In brief, we think that Macedonia is a good economic story. We live within our means, and we are not turning a blind eye to a long-term unemployment, which is a legacy of the dismantlement of large industrial complexes. There is a genuine commitment of the government to improve the economic situation and the living conditions of all citizens. Our performance is not a matter of coincidence. Macedonia fit and vital as a good part because of the continuous preparations for future EU membership. Pursuing the membership, we have actually equipped ourselves with means and tools to adapt to ever-increasing changes in the external environment. We were not alone on this road. We have always enjoyed your support and your assistance, guided by the vision of a common future in the European family and the sense of interdependence. The accession to the European Union is an aspiration that unifies and inspires Macedonian citizens of different ethnic and confessional background. Europe is our goal, not only because we belong here geographically and culturally, and because of the degree of economic integration, but more than anything, because of the identical values that we share, those deeply entrenched in the Treaty of the European Union and the Charter on Fundamental Rights, indivisible, universal values of human dignity, freedom, equality, and solidarity. The aim of the Union to further promote these values by respecting diversities of cultures and traditions of the people of Europe, as well as their national identities, including the Macedonian, represents the key motivational factor for our integration in the European family. Such an approach enables progress of the EU, consistency, and a reflection of the reality. This unifying goal is the reason why we have undertaken comprehensive reforms for transformation and modernization of our society in line with the Copenhagen criteria and the requirements of the accession partnership. Our stabilization and association agreement with the EU entered 10 years of implementation. We are in full compliance with all the commitments of that agreement. Concerning the fulfillment of the political criteria, progress was established in particular as regards the reform of the parliament, the conduct of the anticipated elections, the respect for and protection of non-majority ethnic communities. I do not need to remind that from 10 years retrospective, we are the most successful preventive action of the European Union. The framework for public administration was improved with the creation of a ministry responsible for public administration reform and steps taken for one-stop shop system. The Academy for Training of Judges and Public Prosecutors continues its effective work. A wide-ranging legal package was adopted aimed at further strengthening the efficiency and independence of the judiciary. To put you a little bit closer in the picture, our court decisions are all published online, transcripts publicly available, which makes the transparency and efficiency efforts on the top of the reform agenda. In the fight against corruption, we have made amendments to the legal framework for anti-corruption policy in line with Greco recommendations. The progress made was recognized by the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index 2010, which ranked Macedonia 40 places up compared to the list in 2005. The Ohrid Framework Agreement that you have mentioned, which reached its 10th year of implementation, remains an essential element of our democracy and multi-ethnic society. Progress was made as regards the use of languages and symbols of ethnic communities in the process of decentralization, as well as in the equitable representation of all ethnic communities in the public administration. We have also improved the ability to assume the obligations from the membership and achieve good progress in the legal harmonization with the EU acquis, in particular in the areas such as the economic and monetary policy, financial services, company law, energy sector, customs union, agriculture and rural development. Nevertheless, challenges remain and we recognize them. Improving further the level of compliance with the Copenhagen criteria and in particular the situation in the key reform areas for the entire region such as the judiciary, public administration, media, fight against corruption remain at the core of government efforts in the forthcoming period. Macedonia reform efforts have been duly acknowledged by the Commission. Last month, it recommended again for the third consecutive time that accession negotiations should be opened with Macedonia. The decision-making process on this matter was, however, put off in the past couple of years because of a consideration that a mutually acceptable solution to the name dispute with Greece is imminent. To arrive without any further delay to a mutually acceptable solution that will not harm the national, linguistic and cultural self-identification of neither the Macedonian nor the Greek people requires that both sides proactively and constructively contribute to the name talks. The Greek side, being fully occupied by managing the consequences of the debt crisis, has not been able to do so. While understanding the difficult time, the costs of a stalemate are solely paid by Macedonia and at a very high price. It is also a European interest that Macedonia continues with its positive democratic and socio-economic development in a motivational climate provided by accession negotiations. The status quo is unsustainable and harmful. Delaying further the repeatedly recommended merit-based opening of accession negotiations will not encourage further efforts for resolution. This is not time for imposing obstacles to our European and Euro-Atlantic future. What we need now is a new focus and a new constructive approach. Setting an indicative time-frame mechanism for reaching a mutually acceptable solution during the initial stage of the EU accession negotiations could inspire positive developments in the UN-led process. Moreover, a decision along these lines will positively influence the reform dynamics and the inter-ethnic and inter-religious cohesion in Macedonia, as well as the overall regional stability. Greece, as the oldest EU member state in our region and a declared friend of enlargement, can give a decisive input into the revitalization of the European integration perspective of the entire region. We have urged the new Greek government, enjoying the widest possible political backing, to use this unique opportunity to support the opening of accession talks with Macedonia and thus contribute in concrete terms to building the positive EU integration dynamics in the Balkans. The history of the European integration is full of evidence that the EU accession negotiations create adequate political stimulus and enabling environments for resolving open bilateral issues between member states and candidate countries. In every previous enlargement, there were bilateral challenges of economic, political, practical or irrational nature. It was common for all bilateral problems to be solved during the accession negotiation process. It has been always the case. The latest such example was provided in our region by Slovenia and Croatia while reaching a mutually acceptable agreement and linking its enforcement with the alignment of the EU membership, with the attainment of the EU membership. I'm confident that both Macedonia and Greece, supported by the European Union, can also follow this positive model. Pursuing the European methodology and enabling the opening of EU accession negotiations will prompt the positive climate of mutual confidence for permanently resolving the remaining bilateral difference in the spirit of European cooperation, for which we have excellent basis. Honourable members, I appeal for your vocal support to move the EU-Macedonian relations into a new stage. We need more of strategic thinking beyond the uncertainties of today. We must protect what we have achieved together, all political and financial investments that have been made in Macedonia. Any further delay in the process will have discouraging effects, especially among the young people who wish to see Macedonia as a modern society, integrated within Europe, with plenty of opportunities to express their creative and entrepreneurial skills. At the end, allow me to finish with the thought of one of the founding fathers, Jean Monnet, which has turned into reality in today's Europe. We are not bringing together states, we are uniting people. For us, the Macedonian people, there is but one way forward. There is but one path toward our future. It is a path of unity within Europe, and we have set our course upon it. We will not turn the back, but we will ask for continued encouragement and support. This is what we expect you to do. The responsibility is ours, common, upon the very principles of modern Europe, to continue the process of unification for the benefit of the citizens, both of the Republic of Macedonia and the European Union. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mr. Minister. La parola al Presidente.
The floor to the Chairman of the EU, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia Joint Parliamentary Committee, Chatzimarkakis. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to welcome you to the Committee for Foreign Affairs. So, dear Minister for Foreign Affairs, dear Nicola Popоски, I would like to congratulate you personally on your post. I would also like to welcome the new ambassador, because you're an excellent choice for this extremely important post here in Brussels. And I'd also like to congratulate the committee, because Richard Howe, the rapporteur, was together on the 3rd and 4th of November, together with the EP delegation. You were in Skopje, and there we were able to visit Sobrania and discuss various things together with him. So I'm very happy Minister Nicola, that you are here and that you have, for the third time, had this very positive decision, because we can see the progress that's being made. There is progress being made. And what I think is particularly positive is the economic development in a very difficult environment, because given the general financial crisis, things are not getting any easier, because we know that there are blocks on borders to the south, which doesn't make it easy to export, of course. No, we know that the border staff aren't working. That's partly why there are these problems on the border. But we've seen that far from the country not lagging behind, it's still very much on the path towards economic development. And we've seen that 80% of the people in your country support the European idea. This is excellent, because these kind of figures are rare to find in very many member states of the European Union at the moment. So I think that is to be welcomed. I would also like to congratulate you on the 10th anniversary of the Ohrid Agreement. The event that was organised was very successful, and I think it reflects what's happened in the country over the past 10 years, in particular between the people that make up the majority and then the minority, those of Albanian origin, because I think there is this very important reform which serves as an example and a lesson. However, there are one or two traces of grey on the blue horizon. We have a very bright blue horizon, but there are these vague clouds, and these clouds are becoming slightly more visible, I think, than was the case in the past. Perhaps I can just pick up on one aspect which is of particular importance for us in the European Parliament, and that is media freedom. The Commission, in its progress report, has adopted a very clear position on this, and this has led to the Commissioner, together with other important figures who represent the European Union, being attacked personally. They've been subject to personal attacks, and I think this is something we have to be rather careful about. We have to cooperate, of course. We have to work in a cooperative way. But if there are critical voices should be noted. But whoever is getting the message across, in this case, Stefan Füle, the Commissioner, should not be attacked personally, in personal terms. And I would very much like to ask you as the Foreign Minister to try and get that message across in your country. Coming on to media freedom, this is an issue that has been picked up on as well. Those responsible for foreign affairs in the government, Rifi, has convened a round table. That round table has met on a number of occasions and issued certain recommendations, which I think is to be very much welcomed, because that's the path I think we have to follow together. Within the European Union, there are those countries that do have their problems with media freedom, and we have had a heated debate in the European Parliament on these issues. For example, when it comes to media freedom in Italy, one of the founding member states of the European Union. So we have had to tackle these problems here as well. So the Round Table initiative is very good. And one of the most recent developments, i.e. the letter from Prime Minister Popоски, a letter to the Greek Prime Minister, that's a very positive step as well, where he asks for this blockade to be lifted. And this shows for me that the carriage towards the European Union has not been decoupled from the rest of the train. There are those who maybe could have had that impression, but that is not the case, and I'm very happy to see that we are all now together on track. And I think this is important, especially looking ahead to the 5th of December, because, as we know, the International Court in The Hague is going to issue a ruling probably on the 5th of December, and obviously all of us within the European Union are going to have to work on the various perspectives we have. And I would like to thank you very much for the high-quality programme that you had organised for us in Skopje, together with Richard Howard and the other colleagues. The Prime Minister was available to meet us for quite a long time and was also on that, at that meeting able to go into a lot of detail about plans for reform. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for the good quote that you have chosen in your presentation. And we have to continue to work in this way, constructively, cooperatively, and with the European spirit in mind.
Il secondo intervento è quello del...
Second speaker is from the rapporteur, Mr. Howard.
Well, firstly, I've met Foreign Minister Popоски so many times in the last few months since assuming my responsibilities as rapporteur that it would be easy to forget actually this is the first time since he departed from being the ambassador in Brussels and assumed the very important position of Foreign Minister of your country that you've appeared before the European Parliament. So I would like to join with the President and with the President of the Joint Parliamentary Committee in warmly congratulating you on your appointment, welcoming you back to the European Parliament where we know you will be a regular visitor in the years ahead, and welcoming the very strong partnership between you personally and this Parliament, and at the same time welcoming the new Ambassador who, this is my second meeting with him. It's great to see him here, I think, within 1 week of assuming his responsibilities in Brussels, and I think both of your presence here today is a very, very important signal of the close partnership between us. I join with the President in welcoming not just the 10th anniversary of the Ohrid Framework Agreement, but the 20th anniversary of your country and its independence. We celebrate that with you this year, and we send our best wishes through you to all of the citizens of your country. And I say at the outset what I've said in private to you and to all of my colleagues, that this Parliament last year took the position that a date should be set straight away for accession talks to start. As the new rapporteur, that's also my opinion, and that will be the proposal that I put before this Parliament when I draft the resolution that will be debated in the weeks ahead. And I say that very, very openly. That's our position, and I hope it will remain our position. I'd also like to thank my colleague Mr. Chatzimarkakis, not just for the kind comments that he made about me personally, but also for the way that he integrated me in the work of the Joint Parliamentary Committee. And I do see that Joint Parliamentary Committee as being a very important component of the relationship between the European Union and the country, and interparliamentary cooperation being a very important way that we can advance our aims. So my working relationship with him and his colleagues is something also I prize. To Foreign Minister Popоски, I'm going to put 3 questions to you today, because that's the purpose of Parliament and you expect no less. The first one is on the economic development question. You referred to yourself the Doing Business report and its results. Tomorrow in Skopje, the European Commission will be undertaking a conference on economic development and the importance of economic development. And I was going to be there. I'm now here because I think your visit here it was more important to be here. But I do think that it's important that we send a message to investors from the European Union, to European investors from the European Union into the country. And I invite you today to add your own message to that to them. I see myself the economic case for your country's accession to the European Union to be the strongest driver of this process. And I want to see more business-to-business contacts, I want to see more investment, and I want to see that lead to greater economic development in your country, and I invite you to send your own message today. Secondly, we meet just a few days before the International Court of Justice judgment. You didn't refer to that in your presentation. It clearly is sensitive. But I think it is important that we put all the relevant arguments onto the table today. So I invite you to comment on the importance of that judgment. None of us can anticipate its outcome, but certainly I know that you have said that your government has said that you will respect the outcome, whatever it is, and I invite you to share your thoughts about that to the wider audience today. And finally, on your question about using the screening period as a new deadline for getting a successful resolution on the name issue. This is a new initiative from your government. It's one that I find very interesting. Clearly, to break a stalemate, to break a logjam, we need creative solutions in order to be enabled to do so. But I put to you in public what I've put to your government in private. If we were to adopt and get support for this proposal, what makes you optimistic that over the year and a half that we're talking about, that the circumstances will come right so that we can get that successful resolution from your and from all points of view?
Il seguente intervento.
The next speaker is Shadow Rapporteur, Mr. Tannock.
Thank you, Mr. President, and also I'd like to give my congratulations on behalf of the ECR Group to Foreign Minister Popоски. I enjoyed working with you when you were ambassador to the European Union, and I'm sure that you will bring your very valuable experience with relish to Skopje now as head of Macedonian diplomacy. I was a founder member in this Parliament in the last legislature of the Friends of Macedonia. I and my group remain committed to supporting your country in its Euro-Atlantic aspirations. I had the pleasure of meeting Prime Minister Gruevski in London 2 weeks ago at the IDU Leaders Conference dinner, and I know that your government can also count upon the support of the British government in this respect. As we are putting together the final touches here in Brussels of the Croatian accession package, it's clearly a tragedy that Macedonia is still being blocked from even opening negotiations for accession due to the bilateral name dispute with your southern neighbour. I campaigned during the recent elections in Skopje and in the eastern part of your country, and I saw firsthand the vibrancy of Macedonian democracy, but I also saw the economic vulnerability of a small landlocked country, particularly as the Eurozone faces an existential crisis, and there are global problems with growth both in the UK and in the United States and in your immediate neighbourhood. So let's now hope that the new Papademos government in Athens, as well as sorting out their own very serious fiscal problems, will also normalise relations with Skopje. And lastly, like Richard Howard, I wish you every bit of luck at the ICJ and its judgment in the next few weeks. Thank you.
The last shadow rapporteur is colleague McAvey.
Thank you, President. I'm not shadow rapporteur. I'm supplanting the delegation PCC with Macedonia. For the third year in a row, the European Commission recommended the opening of the accession negotiations with Macedonia. Yet, due to the bilateral issue existing between Greece and Macedonia, accession negotiations have not started yet. This is unusual, and it is the first time when it happens for a candidate country. Earlier this month, you sent a letter to Brussels asking the EU ministers to give a start date for the country's membership talks, and ahead of the December EU Council of Ministers, Prime Minister Gruevski wrote to the Greek Prime Minister last Monday urging him to leave the 3-year-long Greek blockade of Macedonia's EU accession talks. My question is if you received any feedback from the newly elected Greek Prime Minister and from the EU ministers. And also I would like, as a comment, to say that this is a bilateral issue and it should not stop the opening of the negotiations. And opening of the negotiations means opening of the chapters, which means work to do for the Macedonian people, which means changing the country, because at the end of the day, this is the aim of the accession process. Thank you.
Colleagues, could I ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes, because otherwise there won't be time left for the Minister to respond. The next speaker, this time it is a shadow rapporteur, Gukan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. I will skip the pirouettes, Mr. Minister, but you know that I welcome you most sincerely. I would like to ask you about the following issue. I hate to say that somehow we are falling into the routine. We welcome the representatives of Macedonia, we have excellent exchange of views, and then it repeats again and again and again. There are new governments in Greece, new government in Skopje. We all hope that after these new governments are in office, something will happen, some kind of breakthrough, but it does not come. I fully support the starting of the accession negotiations. I have all the best wishes for you, but I think that you really should be very realistic in the approach to the name issue. It is the most difficult. I know that you said that you wait our vocal support for European aspirations of your country, but what would you say, what kind of, I don't know, new elements, if any, you envisage in the strategy of how to resolve this issue, which must be very frustrating for you and for many of us, because we would like to see your country moving ahead, and it is still not happening, and I don't know how realistically optimistic we can be concerning that issue. Thank you.
Grazie. Collega.
Thank you. Colleague Kovacek.
Thank you very much, President. Minister Popоски, welcome here in our Foreign Affairs Committee. You can be sure that the biggest part of our members are supportive to your country, to the all Western Balkans country, but especially to Macedonia. And I can say from my experience that Bulgaria has the most biggest interest that Macedonia becomes as soon as possible a member of the European Union, because I think this is the only one possibility to overcome the injustice what's happened in the past. The history is as it is. We cannot change the history. We should not manipulate the history. And the only one possibility to overcome this is the European integration, because our citizens from both sides of the border in Bulgaria and in Macedonia has a common history. They suffered a lot in the past, and we need to pave the way for them for freedom and for prosperity together in Europe, where the borders will become only symbolic. But you mentioned something about respect of national identity, which is totally true and should be applying for all countries, only in case that this national identity is not coming on the cost of the national identities of other member states or other countries, and is based on the objective historical truth. Any kind of continuing to follow the old Yugo-communist ideology of mythology of the history is not going in the right direction of the European values and tolerance between the member states in the European Union. So my concrete question is, are you going to follow the recommendations of the European Parliament, repeated in many resolutions of the European Parliament, that as a confidence-building measure we need to start to celebrate together our common history? History, despite of the wish of some people who deny this, is common for our countries, and we need to celebrate it together and not try to divide it. Thank you very much.
La parola alla collega Kopp.
Colleague Kopp.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like also to welcome the new minister. We know each other since the time he was ambassador in Brussels, and I really want to wish him all the best in his new assignment. On Monday, as you said, we expect the decision of the International Court of Hague, and we all expect it with great interest. Also, there are different information that circulate in both countries. Still, yesterday we read some very disturbing declaration of President Ivanov that Greece is exercising pressure on the court. This is really not helpful concerning the atmosphere between the two countries. And would you be kind enough, Mr. Minister, as to present the basis of this insinuation of your President? And the last comment concerning, of course, the name issue. Unfortunately, in my view, Mr. Gruevski lost the momentum of Mr. Papandreou being the Prime Minister. Mr. Papandreou was committed in solving the issue, and that is why he proposed the parallel mechanism of Prime Ministers' meeting. Unfortunately, there was no result. Now, I'm sorry to say that it's doubtful whether the new national unity government, with the participation of parties that have second thoughts about the proposed solution by the former government, will continue on the same track. Thank you.
Perfetto, collega Coppa.
Thank you. Colleague Giannaco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Minister. The question of the name is vital for you and for Greece. But we see all these years that you stay in the same position. The Greek government, the previous Greek government, and the opposition, who was the government of Mr. Papandreou after, made a new proposal to find a name with a geographical definition, so they moved. But your government don't want to move anyway, and you still continue the manipulation of the history, as Mr. Kovachev mentioned it, and the propaganda. Do you think that helps this problem? Because Greece, out of the name, has the accession of your country in the European Union and all the Balkan countries. Your country is in Europe, and it's not our country who want to avoid this perspective for your country. But you have to move also. So the reality is that Greek government, with difficulties we have in Greece, as you have, I understand, coming from citizens, they don't want to move to another position. But Greek government, Greek political system moved to another position. What are you doing as a country and government? Thank you.
Mr. Tokes, collega.
Chairman, I also join those who congratulated to Foreign Minister Popоски. We are all supporting, as neighboring countries, the accession of your country, Foreign Minister, to the European Union. We are from the same country with Mrs. McAvey, and I also share her opinion that the blockade of the beginning of the negotiations for more than 3 years is quite scandalous. I'd like to ask you about the developments of bilateral Greek-Macedonian negotiations or dialogue, let's call it in this way. Have you any dialogue, bilateral dialogue, in order to solve the name dispute? Otherwise, dear colleagues, in my opinion, this postponing start of negotiations is endangering the credibility of the integration process of the European Union. We cannot accept that for so long while there is happening nothing. We have to find adequate means to forward the process, to accelerate the process, and I think you, Minister, have the full support of the European Parliament in this direction. I wish you success, and I congratulate for the reforms and the results.
Ultimi due oratori.
Last two speakers, Peterle and Pak. First, Mr. Peterle.
Spoštovani gospod minister, moje iskrene čestitke k vašemu imenovanju in seveda vam želim veliko uspeha pri delu. Jaz sem vesel vztrajanja Makedonije na evropski poti in čestitam k doseženemu v zadnjem času, še posebej gospodarski rasti in Only English. Oh.
Only English. Please speak English.
Let's start again. So, Mr. Minister, my sincere congratulations to your appointment and best wishes in exercising your responsible duties. I've been pleased by Macedonian spirit on the way to the European Union, and my congratulations to the results, to the recent results, especially to the economic growth and to the public finance picture of your country. I think I understand what does it mean to be in a waiting room, especially if this lasts for several years. You mentioned interdependence. I think that this accent is maybe even more valid in this part of Europe than in some other parts of it. I would like to remind colleagues that 29th of November was the national holiday of the former Yugoslavia, exactly this day. And yesterday, the last Prime Minister of Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Mr. Ante Marković, died. The political development has shown that in this particular area of former Yugoslavia, only European perspective can assure added political value. I do hope and I really expect that we are coming by recognizing the positive results, but also with critical awareness on still open issues, that we are coming into a new phase of the accession process, which will lead to the opening of negotiations. I suppose that for the solution of the so-called name issue, the realistic political will is needed on both sides and real political action. I'm sure that the blockade of a candidate country there is no profit for anybody in this game. So I really hope that in this new situation steps forward will be done soon. Thank you.
Colleghi, abbiamo pochissimo tempo.
Colleagues, we have very little time. We still have two other speakers that we probably missed. Could I ask you to stick to a minute and a half? Otherwise, we'll only hear ourselves speak and the Minister won't have time to respond. We would have to probably meet in the bar afterwards then. Mrs. Pak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to warmly welcome the new ambassador and the former ambassador in his new post now as Minister for Foreign Affairs. I have 2 points. The first is that for years now we've been waiting for the solution of this blockade problem. And I have had a lot of faith and trust in all of this. I know that all sorts of things are being discussed around about this. And I think it's been going on a little too long. And I know that there was this idea of Macedonia having a double name, and then Greece said, well, you can't use the adjective Macedonian, so then the whole thing started all over again. And people weren't born yesterday. They've always called the language Macedonian and the country Macedonia, and I think we ought to be a little more generous on this. But I think the whole issue has led to a situation where in Macedonia we've seen a resurging of nationalism, which was a thing of the past. So you can ask yourself whose fault it is, but I think both sides have to work on this, the current government now as well, and anybody who's responsible for this. And I'm quite sure that the new government in Greece will not be able to solve this. in a different way to the way it could have been solved in the past, because it's a government of technocrats. So we're going to have to wait until next year, probably. And then I have to say something on the media. I've just heard from my colleague Kovacev that I've been quoted, or was quoted yesterday, with all sorts of very difficult to understand comments for Bulgarian colleagues. And I've never given statements on anything that I'm not familiar with. And I don't know where this letter has come from. But then I'm quoted for about half a page long. So, I mean, if this is the Macedonian media, then that would turn me into an enemy. So whoever's responsible for this, for the background to this, or those people who are politically responsible, I mean, if you can't, you have to be careful about not losing your friends. So please make sure that one is not erroneously quoted. Thank you.
Colleague Nicolai.
Colleague Nicolai.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the Shadow Rapporteur on behalf of the Liberal Group. And I want to congratulate you, Minister, for your appointment and also for the achievement that your country have in this process. On our view, you are prepared for the opening of the negotiation. It's normal to start, and the country is fully part of this process. I'm a little bit frustrated because I consider unusual that one country can block the future of our country. Maybe it's our task to find a solution on this area. I have only concrete question. Now you have a stable and new government. What are the relation of your of the political party, main political party, with the opposition party? Now you have a normal way to react together. And the second is related to the situation of the minority in your country. What was the new achievement in this area?
Grazie. L'ultimo intervento il collega.
Thank you. Last comment, colleague Itcher.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll avoid the diplomatic phrases about welcoming the minister. We know each other very well, in order to make my speech shorter. First of all, Mr. Minister, 3 weeks ago I asked your Prime Minister Gruevski about a probable referendum on the name issue. And the answer was, we know in advance what the result or the score or the answer of the referendum might be. Could you please elaborate a little bit more, because a referendum is obviously necessary in this case. The stalemate is going on. The both countries, Greece and Macedonia, are not preparing to retreat from their positions. So why don't we talk already about the referendum? Then, the census, it was cancelled or postponed. Can you say when is likely to have a census in Macedonia, and would you commit yourself, not in a capacity of a foreign minister, which is difficult, but in a private capacity, that this time there will be a section in the formula for the Bulgarians in Macedonia, because we see that small and even smallest ethnic groups are included in the formulas, not the Bulgarians. By the way, the Bulgarians in Macedonia were, according to the reliable Carnegie inquiry, 1.2 million. These people disappeared after the Second World War, and now we all are curious to see whether there are Bulgarians in Macedonia or not. According to my modest knowledge, 100,000 of them are applicants for Bulgarian passports, and 40,000 of them have got their passports already. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, hard to do, but you have 5 minutes for answers.
How many? 5 minutes. Okay. Let's make proof of a European efficiency then. Yeah. I'll group the answers, if you don't mind, focusing on the bullet points that you have mentioned before. So now, first one was regarding common history. From what I've learned, and I've learned from European history books about the history of our region, it is true that we share a common past, and that past is linked all the way back through the Roman Empire to the Ottoman Empire. And probably the emergence of the nation states in our region has been linked to a perception of ourselves at different points of history. it shouldn't exclude, basically, basic principle, and I will switch to French if possible, quoting Denis de Rougemont au Congrès à La Haye. La vocation de l'Europe se définit clairement. Elle est d'unir ses...
The idea is to unify the peoples according to their real genius, which is diversity, and under the conditions of the 21st century of community, before opening up to the voice of organized freedom. The supreme conquest of Europe is called human dignity. Its true form is in liberty. That is what's at stake in our fight. It's to safeguard our acquired liberty, but also to expand the benefits to all people that we want in the union of our continent. And Europe plays its destiny on that union and that of the peace of the world.
About different perceptions that we might have. Basically, we can agree or disagree on the context and history of the past of our region, but the basic principle in modern Europe should be the one of self-determination. It's quite anti-European, actually, to define how one should feel about his national identity, about his language. I think that these are core values that we all have a responsibility to protect. That is our common asset, and pretty much all about the success story of the European Union is based on respecting these principles. You have mentioned also the ICJ court. ICJ, basically this claim has been filed from Macedonia with only one perspective, and that is respect of international law. We have concluded in 1995 something that is called an interim agreement, which fixes the rules of engagement from both countries. On one side, it has required a number of unilateral concessions, going from change of constitution, flag, and all different sorts of formulations, on the other side of the balance, having only one single asset. And that is the perspective of being integrated in the international context, where the first part of the interim agreement, meaning Greece, has the obligation not to block us. This rule has been violated at the occasion in the NATO context in 2008, and this was the perspective of coming back to a certain certainty in international law and in our engagements. Whatever the decision might be, I think we have a duty as a responsible member state of the United Nations to respect it and to go along these lines. But I think what will help us definitely is to get out of a blame game and be constructive and focus on a larger objective, which is the one of allowing every single state in the Balkans to become member of the European Union. I think we will all benefit from that. I have heard remarks from member states from the region, and I believe that if they are sustained in the actions that you're taking and the decision-making processes, this will be the most helpful gesture that one can make in securing peace and prosperity in Europe. You have mentioned also, which is, how many, what was the timing? Otherwise... Past.
No, I'm joking.
You have mentioned minorities.
5 more minutes.
Okay, you have mentioned minority rights and the concept we might build in this respect. I think that Macedonia has an exemplary model in terms of respecting rights of all those who are not part of the majority Christian Macedonian population. It sets a benchmark, and I wouldn't attribute these assets only to our capacity to build such a society. I think a lot of the credit goes to you, members of European Parliament, but also the European Union as a whole, because you have helped us to pave a way which drives us along the lines of the values that I've quoted at the very beginning. It will be very useful, and I think that it can be also a valuable asset to the member states of the European Union coming from our region, that these values are affirmed in a positive way, and that we all have our little contribution on, for example, how is a Roma issue treated in Macedonia. We are just taking the presidency of the Roma decade, and in this context I think that I feel proud to be representing a country which has a minister, a deputy minister, a deputy in the parliament, a mayor who is from the Roma community. In these terms, we also allow not only to benefit, to share the benefits of the Euro integration process, but also to take the burden of the responsibilities, each one of us. You have mentioned also the census. Census, unfortunately, instead of being only mathematical operation, it has a political dimension. I would be the happiest when we will reach a stage when we will treat numbers according to mathematical standards, just applying the rules of Eurostat, as one would expect. However, these numbers are linked to a certain number of rights, and they have reflection on the ground. Whenever the application of these rules is not consistent, it does not allow us to have a comparable data. And in these cases, it is much smarter to stop the operation, to allow for these conditions to be met on the ground, instead of conducting a census just for the sake of having a census and knowing that it has the burden of budgetary restrictions. We are spending money on that. That was the idea behind it. We will certainly benefit from making it happen sooner rather than later, but we have to make it, number one, by applying Eurostat rules, and number two, by those rules reflecting, let's say, the real situation in the country. That would be our main asset. Prepared for opening of negotiations or not? I think, and I believe that this will be a general remark to our Greek friends in the room and the questions that they have raised, I think that we are really in a stage where the blame game does not help anyone. I believe that by getting out, giving a chance to a more European approach that gets away from a perspective of, well, I block you because I can, to something that is, I have the credibility of being the oldest EU and NATO member state in the region, and I would like to share these assets, this added value, with all of my neighbors, knowing that each one of them has a key interest to develop these relations. There is a very complicated task ahead of the new technical government in Greece, but I think it has a huge asset in the fact that it possesses probably the largest possible backing within the parliament. If we focus on the objectives rather than on applying the same methodology that has not been shown as a successful one in the previous experiences, I think everybody would benefit. So blocking for 3 years the start of negotiations and knowing that as a member state you have every single instrument in your hand to basically preserve your positions as a member state is not reasonable, not very European. Maybe exporting a new approach, a new methodology in this manner will help everybody around the table. Now, in the interest of the time and the number of questions that you have raised, I think that we will have to stop unless you have something to complement on these points.
We are waiting for another guest.
Okay, so we have to.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I would like to thank you very much for your contribution, and I would be very happy to see you at one of the next occasions in the European Parliament and invite you to Macedonia. Thank you very much.
Very sorry, but